The silence in my house on March 15th was deafening. Not a single phone call, not even a text message. My 75th birthday had come and gone like any other ordinary day, and my heart felt as empty as the dining table where I sat alone with a store-bought cupcake and a single candle. My name is Margaret Rose Thompson, and I've lived through 7.5 decades of life's ups and downs. But nothing, absolutely nothing, had prepared me for the crushing realization that my own son, Robert, had completely forgotten the day I brought him into this world. Let me take you back to the beginning, to help you understand how we got here. It wasn't always like this between Robert and me. There was a time when we were inseparable, when he would count down the days to my birthday with the excitement of a child waiting for Christmas morning. I was barely 19 when I married his father, William Thompson, in 1968. Those were different times when women were expected to marry young and dedicate their lives to their families. William was a good man, hard-working and devoted, but life had other plans for us. When Robert was only 8 years old, William was diagnosed with lung cancer. The doctors gave him 6 months. He lasted 4. Suddenly, I found myself a widow, at 27 with a young boy to raise on my own. The life insurance policy William left behind was modest, barely enough to cover the funeral expenses and a few months of bills. I had to make a choice, sink into despair or fight for our survival. I chose to fight. Working 3 jobs became my reality. During the day, I cleaned offices downtown, scrubbing floors until my knees ached and my hands were raw. In the evenings, I waited tables at Murphy's Diner, forcing smiles for customers while my feet screamed in pain. And late at night, after Robert was asleep, I took in sewing work, mending clothes by lamplight until my eyes burned with exhaustion. Robert never went without. Even when I had to choose between buying groceries for him or new shoes for myself, he always came first. I wore the same worn-out boots for 3 winters in a row, with cardboard covering the holes in the soles, just so he could have proper school supplies and decent clothes. The sacrifices were endless. I gave up my dreams of becoming a teacher, something I'd always wanted to do. Instead, I channeled all my energy into ensuring Robert had every opportunity I never had. When he showed interest in piano lessons, I worked overtime for months to afford them. When he wanted to join the baseball team, I sold my grandmother's wedding ring to pay for the equipment and fees. If you're connecting with Margaret's story of sacrifice and determination, please hit that subscribe button. Your support means the world to us as we share these powerful life experiences. As Robert grew older, I watched with pride as he excelled in school. He was intelligent, ambitious, and had inherited his father's strong work ethic. When it came time for college, I knew we couldn't afford the tuition, but I was determined to find a way. I took out loan after loan, mortgaged our small house, and worked even more hours to support his education. "Mom, you don't have to do all this," Robert would say, but I could see the gratitude in his eyes. "I can work part-time, get scholarships." "Nonsense," I'd reply, ruffling his hair the way I did when he was little. "Education is the one thing no one can ever take away from you. Your father would have wanted this." Robert graduated with honors, got accepted into law school, and eventually became a successful attorney. Watching him walk across that stage to receive his diploma was the proudest moment of my life. All those years of struggle, all those sleepless nights, had led to this moment. I had done it. I had raised a son who would never have to worry about money the way I did. As the years passed, Robert married a lovely woman named Patricia, and they were blessed with 2 beautiful children, Emma and James. I was overjoyed to become a grandmother, and I threw myself into that role with the same dedication I'd shown as a mother. I babysat whenever they needed, helped with school projects, and made sure to be present for every birthday party, school play, and graduation. But somewhere along the way, things began to change. Robert's visits became less frequent. Phone calls turned into text messages, which then dwindled to holiday greetings. I told myself he was busy with his career and family, that this was natural as children grow up and build their own lives. I continued to be there for every important moment. When Emma needed surgery, I was in the waiting room. When James broke his arm, I rushed to the hospital. When Patricia was overwhelmed with the children, I stepped in without being asked. I thought this was what families did for each other. The important wake-up call came gradually, then all at once. Last year I realized I hadn't received a birthday call from Robert. When I mentioned it the next time we spoke, he seemed genuinely surprised. "Oh, Mom, I'm so sorry. Work has been crazy, and with the kids' schedules." He trailed off, making promises to do better next year. I forgave him, of course. Everyone forgets things sometimes, and he was under a lot of pressure. But deep down, a small seed of hurt was planted. Then came this year, March 15th, 2024, my 75th birthday, a milestone that should have been celebrated, should have brought the family together. Instead, I spent the entire day checking my phone, jumping every time it buzzed, hoping it would be Robert calling to wish me well. The phone did ring several times. My neighbor Dorothy called to sing happy birthday. My sister Eleanor, who lives 3 states away, but his words felt hollow, like an obligation rather than genuine remorse. This wasn't just a simple oversight. It was a pattern of neglect that had been building for years. "Don't worry about it, Robert," I said calmly. "I understand you're busy." After I hung up, I sat in that kitchen for hours, thinking about my life, about the choices I'd made, and about what my future looked like. I thought about all the birthdays I had never missed for him, all the sacrifices I had made, all the times I had put his needs before my own. Spent 20 minutes catching up and making me laugh. Even the young pharmacist at the local drugstore, whom I barely knew, remembered and sent a card. But not my son, not the boy I had sacrificed everything for. That evening, as I sat in my dimly lit kitchen, staring at the untouched cupcake, something inside me shifted. It wasn't just hurt anymore. It was a profound realization about the relationship I thought we had versus the reality of what it had become. I picked up my phone and did something I had never done before. I called Robert. "Mom, is everything okay?" "It's kind of late," he answered, and I could hear the television in the background. "Robert, do you know what today is?" I asked quietly. There was a pause, a long, telling pause that spoke volumes. Tuesday?" he said, and I could hear the uncertainty in his voice, the dawning realization that he had missed something important. "It's my birthday, Robert. My 75th birthday." The silence that followed was deafening. I could practically hear his panic through the phone. "Oh God, Mom, I'm so sorry. I've been so caught up with the Henderson case, and Patricia's been dealing with Emma's college applications, and I completely forgot. I'm terrible. Can I make it up to you? How about we take you out to dinner this weekend?" Don't forget to subscribe to our channel if you want to hear more stories about family, forgiveness, and finding your strength in life's most challenging moments. The next morning, I made a decision that would change everything. I called my attorney, Harold Fitzgerald, whom I'd known for 30 years. "Harold, I need to make some changes to my will," I said when he answered. "Of course, Margaret. What kind of changes are we talking about?" "I want to remove Robert as my primary beneficiary." There was a pause on Harold's end. "Margaret, that's a significant decision. Are you sure you want to do that? Maybe we should discuss this in person." I've never been more sure of anything in my life. That afternoon, I sat in Harold's office, surrounded by law books and the smell of old leather chairs, and I told him everything. About the forgotten birthday, about the years of feeling taken for granted, about the realization that love should be reciprocal, not one-sided. I'm not doing this out of spite, I explained to Harold, who listened with the patience of an old friend. I'm doing this because I've spent my entire life giving everything to someone who has forgotten the value of what he received. Harold nodded thoughtfully. What would you like to do instead? I had already thought this through. I want to establish a scholarship fund at the community college, specifically for single mothers who are trying to get their education. I want to donate to the local women's shelter where I've been volunteering. And I want to leave something substantial to Dorothy, my neighbor, who has been more of a family to me than my own son these past few years. And Robert? Robert will receive a token amount, enough to know that I didn't forget him in my will, but not enough to change his life, along with a letter explaining why. Harold drew up the documents, and I signed them with a steady hand. Walking out of that office, I felt something I hadn't experienced in years, a sense of control over my own destiny. But I wasn't finished. If Robert had forgotten about me, it was time for him to remember why I mattered. I decided to stop being available at his convenience. When Patricia called asking if I could babysit last minute because their regular sitter canceled, I politely declined. I'm sorry, dear, but I have other commitments. When Robert needed someone to let the repairman into his house while he was at work, I suggested he take time off or ask a neighbor. I'm not available that day. For the first time in decades, I started saying no. But more importantly, I started saying yes to myself. I enrolled in a watercolor painting class at the senior center, something I'd always wanted to try but never had time for. I joined a book club with Dorothy and several other women from the neighborhood. I started volunteering more regularly at the women's shelter, where my life experiences actually meant something to the women I was helping. It took 3 weeks for Robert to notice the change. Mom, you seem different lately, he said during one of our brief phone conversations. Is everything okay? Everything is fine, Robert. I'm just living my life. But you haven't been available to help out like you usually are. Patricia was really counting on you for babysitting last weekend. I felt a familiar tug of guilt, the instinct to apologize and rush to their aid. But I resisted it. Robert, I've been available to help for 35 years. I think it's time you and Patricia learned to manage without relying on me for every inconvenience. I could hear the confusion in his voice. This wasn't the mother he was used to, the one who dropped everything at a moment's notice to solve his problems. Make sure to subscribe if you're enjoying Margaret's journey of self-discovery and want to see how her story unfolds. The real confrontation came 6 months later at Emma's high school graduation party. I attended, of course, because this was about my granddaughter, not about my issues with Robert. But I noticed how differently I was treated. Instead of being asked to help serve food or clean up, I was actually invited to sit and enjoy the celebration, like a guest. After most of the guests had left, Robert approached me in the kitchen. Mom, we need to talk. I continued washing dishes, not looking at him. About what? About this attitude you've had lately. About how you've been different. I turned to face him, really looked at him for the first time in months. He was still my little boy in many ways, but he was also a grown man who had somehow forgotten that his mother was a person with her own needs and feelings. Robert, when was the last time you asked me how I was doing? Not as an opening to ask for a favor, but because you genuinely wanted to know about my life. He opened his mouth to respond, then closed it again. When was the last time you called just to chat? When was the last time you remembered something important to me without me having to remind you? Mom, that's not fair. I've been busy with work, and And I've been busy too, Robert. I've been busy my entire adult life, first raising you alone, then helping you through college, then being available whenever you needed me. But somehow, I was never too busy to remember what mattered to you. The truth hung in the air between us like a weight. I could see him processing my words, perhaps for the first time really understanding the imbalance in our relationship. "I don't know what you want from me," he said finally. "I want you to see me as a person, not just as your mother who exists to solve your problems. I want you to value me the way I've always valued you." That conversation didn't immediately fix everything, but it was a beginning. Robert started calling more often, not to ask for favors, but just to check in. He remembered my birthday the following year, not just with a phone call, but with a visit and flowers. But the real change came in me. I had discovered that I was more than just Robert's mother or Emma and James's grandmother. I was Margaret Rose Thompson, a woman with her own interests, her own friends, and her own worth. The scholarship fund I established has helped 12 single mothers complete their education so far. The women's shelter has become a second home to me, where my experience as someone who overcame tremendous challenges actually helps other women find their strength. Dorothy and I have become the closest of friends, traveling together, taking classes together, and supporting each other through the inevitable challenges of aging. She's the sister I never had, and our friendship is based on mutual respect and genuine care, something I had forgotten was possible. As for my will, it remains unchanged from that day in Harold's office. Robert doesn't know about the changes yet, and may not until after I'm gone. But that's not the point. The point is that I took control of my own story. I learned that love without boundaries isn't actually love. It's enabling. I learned that sacrifice without appreciation becomes resentment. And I learned that it's never too late to start valuing yourself the way you've always valued others. Some people might think I was too harsh, that forgetting a birthday isn't worth changing a will over, but it was never really about the birthday. It was about a lifetime of being taken for granted, of being seen as a convenience, rather than a person deserving of love and respect. My relationship with Robert is better now than it's been in years, precisely because I stopped accepting less than I deserved. When you teach people how to treat you by your actions, they learn. It just sometimes takes a dramatic wake-up call to get their attention. I'm 76 now, and I've never been happier. I wake up each morning with plans that are mine, activities that fulfill me, and people in my life who genuinely value my presence. I've learned to be my own advocate, my own best friend, and my own source of validation. The woman who sat alone with a cupcake on her 75th birthday is gone. In her place is someone who knows her worth and isn't afraid to demand that others recognize it too. To anyone out there who feels unappreciated, taken for granted, or forgotten by the people they've given everything to, it's never too late to change the dynamic. It's never too late to start putting yourself first. And it's never too late to discover that you are worth so much more than you've been settling for. Sometimes the greatest gift you can give someone is to stop making their life so easy that they forget to be grateful. Sometimes love means letting people experience the consequences of their choices. And sometimes the most loving thing you can do is to love yourself enough to demand better. That forgotten birthday became the catalyst for the best years of my life, and for that, I'm actually grateful.